Step 13 talks about sewing on the twill tape or ribbon, and this is totally just a decorative piece. It is not functional, so it won't hold your pants up or you can't pull on it to make them tighter. So it is optional. If you don't want to put it on, you don't have to. But if you do, all you're going to do is take your twill tape and basically stitch it on the center of the front of your pants. So here is the front of my pants. I can tell because of the pocket stitching. And I would put the twill tape right here and then sew across it just on the front. Obviously, don't sew the front to the back. So that is step 13 if you want to do the optional twill tape. Step 14 says, with right sides together, stitch ends of leg band together. So piece 5, we are going to fold in half. Notice that the notches, now again, the picture is after it's been sewn, so it's showing you that the seam allowance is pressed open, but you're matching up the sides that have the notches on them. So if we take a look at piece 5, actually all of the sides have notches on them, but based off of the picture, the notches that are in the middle are the ones that are matched up. So we are going to separate these because these are your leg bands and you have 2 legs. So we want our right sides together, which means my markings are always done on my wrong side. So I'm gonna pull this one off. You don't see any markings on this side. So this is my right side. By folding it with right sides together, all we're doing is matching our notches on, like in the middle. So I know you have notches on all the sides. So if you were looking at the picture, you might say, well, I don't know which sides am I supposed to match up. But if you take another look at the picture, you can see that it is the center notches that are matched up, not the ones that are off center. So we're gonna fold this right sides together. So just fold it in half this way. And I'm gonna take my other one, make sure I don't have any markings because that's on my wrong side. Fold it right sides together. And then I am going to stitch both of these seams, just this shorter edge at 5/8 on both of these. Step 15 says to fold the leg band in half with wrong sides together and raw edges even. Press and pin. So fold the leg band in half with wrong sides together. It would help if your seams were pressed open. I know it doesn't necessarily say to in the step, but all I did was just press them open and just kind of finger press it. You don't even have to go to the ironing board. So you're folding your cuff in half with wrong sides together. So a lot of people want to just like fold it up like this, but that's not going to make a cuff. So we need to kind of fold it in on itself. So starting from the bottom, I just fold it in and up on itself. So now, make sure this is laying flat. See why it helps to have your seams pressed open. You are going to have a cuff. So it says having raw edges even. So that's this top part. That's why you have this notch to help you identify like what should be matched up. And again, we're going to match this on our pants as well. But my seams are even. My raw edges are all the way around here. I have one fold. It's down here at the bottom. You're going to do that again on the second one. So here's my stitching line. I'm going to just kind of press open that seam allowance and then fold it in on itself. And then it says to press and pin. So mine seems to actually stay pretty well just by like finger pressing it. You can go to the ironing board if yours isn't staying well. And then you're going to pin that raw edge together. This is going to be very similar to how we put on our waistband. Is going to be very similar to how we put on our cuff. Okay, so I just put 2 pins in. It seems seemingly staying well. Put a pin in there, fold it around, put a pin on the other side. So step 16 says on outside, pin band to lower edge of leg. So what they're referring to with the outside is outside of the, or right side of the pant leg. Matching seams and placing small dots at side seams. So our side seams are the ones with our pocket, having raw edges even. So let's start with that. So it does matter which cuff goes on which leg because of where your notches are. So if you can, locate where your dots are. So that's what you marked with the chalk. Mine are on the inside. So let's see where they're at. So they're here. So if I put this onto my pant leg, those dots are going to be on the wrong seam. So this cuff goes on this leg, okay? This cuff is going to go on this leg because if I look, here are my notches, and my notches are on the front of my pant leg, and then my markings are going to be matched up with our side seam. So what you're going to do is, here's the outside of my pant leg. This is like where my foot would come through. You're going to slide the cuff. So my folded edge is up right now. It's at the top. Here are my raw edges. You're going to slide the cuff around your pant leg. So I just put my hand in, grab my pant leg, and pull it through. And then you have a couple things to match up in the direction. So first I start with my notch because I know 100% that that is going to be matched up. That's why you have your notches there. So I'm matching up my notches on my cuff to the notch on the bottom of my pant leg. Then it says to put the small dots at the side seam. So my side seam for my pants is over here. I'm gonna have to kind of peel this up and open. There's my small dots. So I'm gonna just hold my finger there and I'm gonna match it up with my side seam. Then have the raw edge of my cuff be even with the raw edge of my pant. And I'm gonna pin that. So don't get all panicky because this is gonna be another thing where you have to stretch it as you're sewing it. That's why they're giving you these marking points, because you know that the notch is gonna match up, you know the small dot is gonna match up to the side seam. The other thing that it tells you in the directions is matching seam. So I have the seams from my cuff right there, and I'm gonna match those up with the inseam on my leg band, or on my actual leg. Make sure my raw edges of my band are even with the leg, and put a pin in. And then it doesn't have anything to match up on the back, so I have all this extra fabric sticking out. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of stretch it to find about where the middle of the band is, even with the middle of the leg. And I'm gonna kind of put a pin in there, just so, again, as we did with the waistband, it gives us points. So we know that we only have to stretch it from here to here to get that to lay flat. And then we only have to stretch it from here to here to get that to lay flat. Okay, so just you want to make sure that the raw edge of the band is even with the raw edge of the pant. And now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I think my leg is backwards. There we go. I could tell because of where my notch was. So I'm going to slide on again, slide the band onto the leg. I'm going to start by matching up what I know matches up. So I know my notches are going to be together. And I know my inseam and my seam of my band are going to match up. So I'll line those up. And pin that. And then I know that my small dots, so I need to look on the inside of my band because that's where my markings are. They're there. So I know that that is going to match up, the markings are going to match up with the outside seam. And then just as I did on the other leg, I'm going to pull this back section because it doesn't give us anything to match it up, kind of find the middle of my fabric with the middle of my cuff, line it up, and pin. And now you're ready to sew this. This is a little bit trickier to sew. You don't want to just put it in your machine and sew it shut because you won't be able to get your foot through. So I'll show you how to do that. The rest of step 16 directions say to stitch, stretching band to fit. So again, you're going to have to stretch this as you're sewing it. And then it says stitch again, 1/4 inch away from first stitching, within seam allowance, trim close to second stitching. This is exactly what we did on our waistband. So we're going to stitch once at 5/8, then once at 3/8 because it's that 1/4 inch from the first stitching, and then trim. So again, just like we said in the waistband seam, you can make that second stitch a seam finish It doesn't have to be just a regular stitch. So I'm gonna stitch once. This is gonna be your 5/8 stitch. And then the stitch closer to the edge would be your 3/8 stitch, because that's 1/4 inch, and it says stitch again 1/4 inch from the first stitching. So 5/8 minus 1/4 equals 3/8. Okay, you can see that I've already removed the accessory compartment. You can probably put this over the end, but it stretches it a lot, and I don't want it to get stretched out as I'm sewing it, so I'm gonna avoid doing that. So for this, instead of putting it over the accessory, or over the center part, I'm just gonna put it around the presser foot. And it makes it a little challenging to see where you're sewing, but that way I'm not sewing my legs shut, and I can control how much it's stretching. Whereas when it's stretched around here, you can't control because it has to stretch to fit over that. So the first stitching is at 5/8. Your edges should be even. And then you're just gonna kind of keep this other section out of the way. Be careful of your hand so you're not getting too close to the needle, but I hold one hand up here and then I hold another hand here as it's feeding, as the feed dogs are pulling the fabric through. And then again, you're gonna have to pull that band a little bit to get your fabric to be laying flat. So stop and kind of readjust, pull some more fabric from the back to the front, hold, keeping the edge at 5/8, and then stretching as you're stretching that band as you're sewing. Stop, readjust. So I just stopped when I got back to where I started. So you should have gone around one full loop. Okay, now we're gonna do our second stitch, which is at 3/8. Again, you can do a regular stitch or you can do a seam finish if you would prefer. Doesn't matter here. Three-eighths is even with the edge of the presser foot, so that's all I have it lined up. And then you're going to trim away your seam allowance, so that extra fabric that's on the outside. After you're done trimming the seam allowance, you can fold your band down. Probably should have checked it before you did that second stitch. Make sure there are no folds or tucks on the right side of your fabric. Looks pretty good. This part got a little bunchy there, but that'll be fine. And then repeat it on your other leg. Same steps. The last step is step 17, which says to press seam toward pants, pressing band out. So you're gonna just unfold that cuff the way that we had it sewed and press your seam towards your pants. Make sure it's like flipped up towards your pants, and then you can give it a good iron. After you've done your pressing, you wanna make sure that you trim any extra threads that are hanging off from your seams. Make sure you've taken all your basting stitches out, check around, and make sure that they're presentable. Congratulations, you sewed your first pair of pants.